Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C, and we also have Josh Emmett. We are worldwide on the iHeartRadio network, and we're entering the world of UFC, and we have the UFC on Fox as we cover the world of the MMA, and you've heard about some great fighters over the years. And Josh, Big C's had about 40 years of knowledge and working in the sports world, in pro sports, TV and radio coverage, also knows a lot about boxing. And of course, you yourself, you're out of the Sacramento area, and you participate in a lot of the MMA and the UFC in Northern California. Now, I actually recall at the Kings of Sacramento, it was called the West Coast Championships and West Coast Fighting Championship 2016. And I actually interviewed you. That was on January 23rd at McClellan Air Force Base. You actually had a great fight that night. You fought a guy by the name of Gallegos out of Northern California also. So, Josh, welcome to the show, and how's the world of UFC treating you these days?
Thanks for having me. It's treating me really well. I made my debut in the UFC about 3 months ago, and I took the fight on a 3-day notice and flew to the Netherlands to fight a tough opponent, John Tuck.
Yeah.
And I came out victorious, so it's been going great, and I'm just enjoying the ride. I have another fight coming up in about 4 weeks, actually, from tomorrow.
Okay, so you have that. Number one, let me ask you about the flight to the Netherlands just to get into a fist fight. Big C, when you guys grew up, didn't you guys fight a guy behind the bar, Big C? He's flying to the Netherlands.
Well, we had a fighting treaty that we would go down to after school, and first guy hit the ground, fight was over. First great fight that was landed. And Josh, I want to sing my praise to you guys for the endurance and the punishment that you took. I played professional football for 8 years before you were born. But when I look at you guys, I revere you. As far as the conditioning that you have to go through to get to that peak performance, what you have to endure during the rounds of those fights from your opponents.
Yeah.
You guys are some of the greatest athletes this world has ever seen.
Well, Josh, let me ask you that because Big C has a lot of praise. Those football players, they do it in pads, but you guys, all you have is your gloves. So talk about what it takes for a fighter mentally to get into the octagon and not be afraid. You have to have a lot of conditioning. What's it like going into it? What advice would you give someone who wants to take on that line of work, Josh?
So I think the majority of it is mainly mental, Like a lot of it, everyone can be really, athletic, and people think of like the physical aspect. But
yeah.
A lot of it's mental because you're going to be locked inside of a cage and you're fighting another man, and he's trying to hurt you.
Yeah.
You're trying to hurt him, and you have to knock someone out, and you physically have to make them submit.
Yes.
And it's crazy, but it's the craziest rush and the craziest high.
Yes.
And just the lifestyle and the reward.
Yes.
Is what I'm chasing. Because I know what I'm capable of.
Yeah.
And I know I'm going to do great things in the sport, and so that's what I'm really chasing.
Let me ask you this question coming up, Josh. You know that this segment is also sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Escalade. And when you go down and test drive it, tell them that Charlton and Big C sent you. Now, Josh, I know you're out of Sacramento, California. How long have you been a part of the fight business?
Let's see. I'm from Sacramento, so I came to Team Alpha Male as Uriah Faber's fight team in 2006 because I've always been a huge fan of the sport. I was interested in fighting, so when he opened his gym in 2006, I went in there. I started taking classes, and then he saw a lot of potential in me, so he asked me if I was interested in fighting, and I said, of course, that's why I'm here.
Yes.
So I continued to do the classes and all that, and I actually got a scholarship to wrestle. So I went down to the Bay Area. There was a private college, Memo College.
Yeah.
So I know I'll get better at fighting because I'll get better at wrestling. I'll get my degree.
Yeah.
And then as soon as I came back in 2010, I picked up where I left off, and I've been training and fighting ever since.
Well, speaking of the training and fighting that you do, when you mentioned that Uriah Faber, obviously we've seen him on Fox, and Fox is covering your fight up north in Vancouver, British Columbia, up in Canada, and that's part of the UFC on Fox. Tell us about that night. Is it a big fight night, and who are some of the other fighters that are more well known that are going to be up there at that event, Josh?
Yeah, so it's a big night. The main event is Damian Maia versus Carlos Condit.
Yeah.
And I believe that's a title elimination. So whoever wins that fight will most likely fight fight Robbie Lawler or Tyrone Woodley, who are fighting this weekend.
Yeah.
And then we have Anthony Pettis is making his featherweight debut. I also have my teammate Paige Van Zandt. She's fighting on that card with a bunch of other fighters in the UFC.
Yes.
And of course myself. So it's going to be a great night. I have a huge group of friends and family coming out with me, and I'm going to put on a show for the world.
Well, that's wonderful. You know, Charlton and Big C Sports, we are worldwide. We also have people that tweet out from Latin America, so I want to say bienvenidos and thank you for that. They can also follow the UFC. We know you're the UFC on Fox. We also have people that tweet out to us from London, England, as well as Berlin, Germany, and Canada, the great country of Canada. I also want to ask you this question, too. You mentioned Uriah Faber. Now, Nate Diaz, he's also from Northern California. He had a big fight with Conor McGregor that was part of the UFC match on Fox. What are your thoughts about Nate Diaz? What do you know about him?
He's an awesome guy. You know, I've cross-trained with him before. He's only 45, 50 minutes away from Sacramento. They live in Stockton.
Yeah.
He's a phenomenal mixed martial artist, great grappler, great boxer. And he beat Conor McGregor on a 10-day notice when he wasn't even training. So now he's had a full training camp.
Yeah.
I think he's just going to go in there and it's going to be a phenomenal fight, but I still see Diaz coming out with the win.
Well, Big C, I know you're big on the money thing, and you know that image. You just told us that Nate Diaz beat McGregor. Did you say he had a 10-day notice? Just 10 days?
10-day notice when he fought him last time. He wasn't even training, and he still beat him.
Big C, you hear that 10-day notice? So if Big C wanted to fight Conor McGregor, all he needs is 10-day notice. Big C, what are your thoughts on that, Big C?
Well, all I think I need is a 12-pack to put my mind at ease and a lounge chair to lean back and let me tire himself out. Because, you know, that first punch that he throws on me, I got to throw in the white towel because, like I said, you know, you guys are phenomenal physically as far as what you do with your endurance, the grappling, as you spoke about, the hand-to-hand combat. The average person thinks that this is an easy sport. You know, people have looked at boxing that they've grown up with over the decades. But when you look at this is really the modern-day gladiators. These are warriors that are sitting out there. And you said there's only really two ways you can win 90% of the time. That's through submission, knockout, or even choke something. And submission is choke out.
Yeah.
So, you know, 90% of the time you have to demolish your opponent.
Yeah.
And I know, does that ever cross your mind of you ever being on the bottom end? I know to be a winner and a champion, you never think about wanting to lose.
Yeah.
But those thoughts at times when you get into trouble in the ring, what goes through your mind?
Yeah, I think, you know, for me, you know, I was undefeated as an amateur, undefeated as a pro. I've never lost a round, but definitely, throughout my training camp, I put myself in bad situations. You know, I put myself in a bad situation, then I try to fight out of it, stay calm, just in case if it were to happen in a fight, because it's so unpredictable. You can be as prepared for a fight as possible, but you really can't control the outcome. You know, so like I said, I try to put myself in those areas, hoping that it won't happen in the fight, and I'll always come out with my hand raised and be victorious. But yeah, a lot of people too, like you were saying, you know, they watch the fights and all these keyboard warriors or all these people like, oh, I could beat him up. Or I listen to people when I go watch these fights and I feel what they're saying. I'm like, they have no idea this guy would kill you. You know, it's just like, it's kind of frustrating, but it is what it is. It's just that some people are just ignorant. You know, they just don't really know what's really going on.
Well, Josh, that's very well said, because the fight business, you know, we've heard about Mike Tyson back in the day. We've also heard about the great Muhammad Ali, of course, his passing. Muhammad Ali had such an influence on the fight world. I know as a fighter, and even though MMA and boxing is a little bit different, you have to have a heart of a champion like Big C talked about. What did Muhammad Ali do to influence the guys of the UFC? I mean, nobody's meant to boxing, but the UFC guys and the MMA guys, what did they pull from Muhammad Ali and how hard he trained and he was a champion for so many years? How does that affect the guys that fight in your world, Josh?
Yeah, I think for a lot of them, he was just, you know, he was out there and he was real witty, you know, so he could say a lot of, you know, he was really funny. That's why he talked to McGregor, trying to pull from him.
Yeah.
You know, just being that showman, you
Yeah.
know what I mean? But still, Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson, I still Mayweather, I think those are some of the greatest boxers of all time. And, but I've always been a huge boxing fan. Like, I used to watch Tyson and Holyfield when I was in high school.
Yeah.
You know, the big controversy. Match and stuff like that, but as far as that goes, I watched a lot of boxing fights, and I love to box, so I feel like I'm a boxer and a wrestler, so I watch all these boxers, Mayweather, Tyson,
Oh, yeah.
Similar like body types, and try to learn from them and emulate some of their, what I can from their style.
What do you feel is the strongest part of your game? Is it the ground and pound, or is it staying at length and getting at somebody from the outside?
Well, I grew up as a wrestler, so I say my base is wrestling. But I've been boxing for a while, and I kind of fell in love with that. And I go boxing pro boxers, and I do really well. And I've been working with my boxing coach Joey Rodriguez for quite some time now. So I feel like in the lightweight division, I'm a little shorter than all these guys. So everyone's taller than me; they have the reach on me, but I can get inside and close the distance fairly quick and work the body, and then that sets up the punches upstairs. So I feel like I do watch a lot of Tyson old matches, and I try to add some. I try to emulate his style, like I was saying.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this question, Josh, as we come up to the final segment of our interview, and thank you again for being on Charlton and Big C Sports as we get into the world of the UFC. We know Fox Sports and Fox Sports 1 does a lot of coverage of the UFC, but I want to ask you, kind of like any sport that has the appeal that the UFC and the MMA has. We know there's Ronda Rousey and then Holly Holmes, who just got beaten in her last bout. You have these 3 and these 5-round bouts, so it's very difficult to even have a slip-up because you can get taken out. And I remember seeing when I interviewed you for the first time, it was at the West Coast Fighting Championships in Sacramento at McKellar Air Force Base. And I just want to say before we ask you this last question that this segment is sponsored by United Labor, guaranteed $100,000 life insurance, and we're also endorsed by the American Cancer Society and the American Heart Association. I'm a broker with United Labor, and I'm looking for 1,000 brokers to go to work offering insurance to all the unions, and maybe some of you MMA and UFC fighters, you guys can get insurance too, Josh. So let me ask you this question. Big C is really interested in this part because it has to deal with Dana White, and we're trying to get an interview lined up with Dana White. He's the godfather of this fight club, the UFC and the MMAs. What do you know about Dana White, and where do you see the future of your industry going with him as a leader? Go right ahead, Josh.
I think that guy's he's a great guy. He's a smart man, entrepreneur. He's done great things with the sport. He took it from a $2 million company to a $4 billion company. They sold that, and he made a huge return on his investment. He stayed on board, and I think it's only going to be great things in the near future. The people that bought the UFC, they've been a part of the UFC since 2009. They're the ones that helped get the UFC that Fox deal.
Yes.
So I believe it's just going to make the fighters more recognized, and I'm hoping there's other like networks hop on board or more Fox fights, and it becomes as popular as the NFL or the NBA. Just so the athletes and the fighters are more recognized, just like those guys, and which means more pay and more notoriety. And I believe that will happen here soon.
Well, Big C, I know you talk a lot about, we had Kimbo Slice, and he just passed, and we had all of these great guys that got into wrestling, MMA, mixed martial arts. And Hulk Hogan is a big name when it comes to the wrestling form, but he doesn't have this MMA skills that you guys have. And like Big C said earlier, Josh, I remember standing next to you. You guys are so lean. Now, I want to ask you this question, and be honest with me. What can I do to get my body in the shape that you guys are in, okay? Are you saying I got to cut out hamburgers and fried food? Josh, tell me the truth now, Josh.
It's hard. And to start off, you have some good genetics. I've lifted weights since I was a little kid. I've always played sports, and right now it's just through a healthy diet, hard work. So I'm practicing 2-3 times, a day. Plus I'm getting some runs in, my strength and conditioning. I'm sponsored by a meal prep company, which is all paleo, organic grass-fed beef and free-range chicken. So it's just it's tough because I love food, but I have to stay to a strict regimen because it'll all pay off. So if I can just suffer for another 5-6 years, it'll all pay off in the end.
Wait a minute. That doesn't turn me on. Big C, did he say he has to suffer to stay in shape? I think most guys have a 6-pack. I think Josh has like an 8-pack, Big C. Does that make any sense?
Well, like I said, I got a 12-pack in the fridge. Anytime you want to come by, and we'll throw some meat on the grill and we'll work out that 12-pack and we'll keep him hydrated. I know that's one of the biggest things they have to worry about doing the matches is being hydrated.
Yeah.
And during my years, I used to work out with a lot of guys who were bodybuilders and watch them how they would dehydrate down to make weight for a fight. And is that a situation with you when you're trying to make weight? Is you over a bit? And then how do you hydrate yourself back up properly to be still in peak fighting condition?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it is similar to like, the old boxers or the bodybuilders. Like right now I'm drinking at least a gallon and a half a day of water, and then leading up to the fight I'll start water loading. So I'm drinking like 2 gallons of water a day, and then in order for me to lose all that weight, I do have to dehydrate myself, but I try to do it in the shortest amount of time possible. So I'll cut back on my water the week of weigh-in, and then I'll just, like last fight, I cut like 14 pounds in about 12 hours. I made weight, and then, I hydrated. I used to do IVs, but now that that's banned for the USADA and the UFC, you can't do IVs anymore.
Yeah.
So they're actually doing great things, and they hired a bunch of nutritionists and other doctors, so that's why we're able to weigh in earlier. And then they gave us some like hydration formula, so it'll help to get hydrated faster and get all the nutrients and everything back to our muscles and brain and stuff like that.
Well, Josh, let me ask you this question. You mentioned, did you say you cut 14 pounds in 12 hours? Is that what I heard you say?
Yes.
How in the world do you do that? Because of water. How do you do that and stay, I guess, healthy? I know there was another fighter that was on Fox Sports, and he was talking just about last month how he was drinking up to, I think, 3 gallons of water a day. I think he said distilled water. So does it matter what type of water? I doubt if you're drinking water out of the water hose like Big C does down in the South. What kind of water are you drinking, Josh, to help you lose that kind of weight in 12 hours?
Well, it's just because all my cells, my muscles, everything is just fully hydrated from those 2 gallons. That's 16 pounds of water that I'm putting in my body a day.
Wow.
So as soon as I start to cut back a little bit,
yes,
and then I sweat like crazy when I'm really hydrated like that. So it's actually really easy to lose the weight in probably like a 90-minute workout. Just hitting this with my coaches, I lost about 7 pounds. I was in sweats, and then I went showered, had a protein shake, and then we hit the sauna.
Yeah.
And I lost the rest of it. It was actually pretty easy, and I was still sipping on some water, having, some fruit and.
Well, wait a minute, Josh. Now you're making it seem. How old are you? Because we have the AARP cards, Big C. I won't tell how old you are, Big C. But we have the AARP card, Josh. I don't think you're near the AARP. So what? How old are you? If you don't mind telling your age, Josh.
I do. I'm actually kind of old for the sport. I'm 31. I'll be 32.
Ouch! Did he say old is 31? Is that what you just said?
I'm wearing a shirt that's old, Josh.
I have shoes that are 31 years old, Josh. So let me ask you this final question for this segment. And I do appreciate you being on, and all you guys at the UFC and the MMA and the guys at Fox Sports and Fox Sports 1, they do a great job of covering the UFC and the MMA fighting on a worldwide, especially one of the most popular sports growing, because it used to be just boxing when we saw Sugar Ray Leonard and Muhammad Ali growing up and fighting with Howard Cosell on ABC Sports. Now everything is on UFC and on Fox, and also Big C Sports will be one of the big carriers of the UFC and the MMA worldwide, along with Fox Sports on the iHeartRadio network. We'll start bringing on weekly shows and weekly fighters. And leading up to our interview with Dana White, I just want to ask you one more time, what do you want to say about your fight coming up in Vancouver, British Columbia? What do you want people to know about what you're expecting to see so we can get more attention around your sport, and especially, Josh, what you're doing to build your business? Go right ahead, sir.
I just want people to know that I'm a businessman. I'm here to fight for the company. I want to entertain the fans first and foremost.
Yeah.
And so when I am going into a fight, I want it to be exciting. In my last fight, I had after I had a compound fracture in the 3rd round, people didn't know that, so they were kind of booing me. So I still had that kind of pissed me off. So I had to put it on him a little bit just so they started cheering me in. But I am here to be exciting. I want to get those performance bonuses, and I want to just continue to show the world that I'm I'm here to stay, and I'm not going to stop until I'm a world champion.
Well, Josh, I believe you are a family man. Now, I know a lot of you guys might be tough in the ring, but if you go home and you don't mention something about a shout out to someone who's giving you support, then you might be put in a headlock. So anyone you want to say thanks to for supporting you when you were just getting started, Josh?
Yeah, of course. I always want to thank all my friends, my family, sponsors, and supporters, and of course my wife. We've been together for a long time, and she's been my biggest supporter, my biggest fan. We've gone through some tough times and struggles and sacrificed a lot of things, but I finally just got here, and I'm going to keep running with it.
Well, I appreciate that very much. The final question, Big C, I'll let you get in one more question. I'm going to ask him the final question. I want to bring up something that I think will add more flavor to what he's doing in the UFC. But, they're going to be on Fox Sports or Fox Sports 1. Big C, final question you want to give out and your thoughts on UFC and why it's become so popular, Big C.
Well, we look at the challenge of UFC, and Josh, we talked about that a lot of people think that they can walk right into a ring and participate at that level that you professionals do. And we know as professionals that cannot happen.
Yeah.
But, the endurance level of what you get to, and I sit there and looked at you, when you were talking about losing 12 pounds, and the average person, again, you lose 12 pounds in a year.
Yeah. Josh did it 12 hours.
I praise you for that. And, your goal is to be a champion one day. You've spoken about the family and friends support, and you always have to have that. But when you look at yourself, what is your number one guide when you're in the ring? What is the number one thing you have to do once that clock starts running?
For me, it's just knowing that I put in the work and I'm more prepared than the other person. I feel like no one's going to outwork me, and I just don't see another person just physically holding me down and beating me up. Like in fights, anything can happen. You get caught in a submission, you get caught, with a big punch or kick. And but for me, I'm just so focused and I'm in the zone. I'm not trying to lose in front of my friends and family. I'm not trying to let this opponent embarrass me in front of my friends and family. So I'm doing everything I possibly can to go out there and impose my will and try to put him away and get the win. I never want to injure my opponent, but I know, he knows what he signed up for. I know what I signed up for. And hopefully we can both go home injury-free to our friends and family, but I'm not going to let someone embarrass me in front of the world either.
Well, Josh,
in other words, what you're doing is telling them, don't take this with the person.
I've heard that.
Exactly.
Final question, Josh. And again, this is Charlton and Big C Sports Worldwide on the iHeart Radio Network. And thank you, iHeart Radio Network, for bringing us into your family at the 5 o'clock p.m. hour up to 6 o'clock p.m. every Monday through Friday at 5 o'clock p.m. And that's worldwide on the iHeart Radio Network. Over 250 million people in their listening platform. And Josh, how you mentioned earlier about Dana White and what he's meant, to the world of the UFC and the MMA, and how he started with $2 million, and now it's about a $4 billion entity. And Fox Sports has you covered. And Charlton and Big C Sports, our goal is to be the number one MMA UFC outlet for your fighters in Northern California and all over the West Coast. I want to ask you your thoughts on Dana White again in the UFC and how Charlton and Big C Sports, what we could do to add more attention to the world of the UFC and the MMA fighters. What do you guys need that people don't know about? Everyone thinks you're making Conor McGregor type of money, but what can we all do to add more attention to what you're doing, whether it's Charlton and Big C Sports or Dana White? Your thoughts on that?
I think as far as, especially for me, just speaking personally, my opinion, a lot of the top guys are making good money, but for some of us just starting out, I think a lot of people think, like you said, we're making all of it, we're rolling in the dough, but that's not the case. So it is beneficial if we can get sponsors outside of the UFC for people that just help pay for medical, pay for travel, training, supplements, all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
And we can endorse their product or their brand, if that may be. But I'm always looking for sponsors and just to help me out, and I like to, meet the individual or the company I represent and make sure that we're both on the same page. And,
yes.
And I'm loyal to whoever's been there since the beginning with me, and I would like to just grow together, and we can, cross-market, cross-promote, and do some big things as I grow in the sport.
Well, I appreciate you very much, Josh Emmett. Again, I met you the first time back on January 23rd at the West Coast championships, the West Coast Fighting Championships 2016, and that was at McClellan Air Force Base in Sacramento, California. There were a lot of guys out there, from Max Griffin to David Mitchell. They were also on one of our former programs, as well as you, Josh Emmett. You fought Gallegos. I met Applet as well as Boughton. And there's a lot of good fighters out there that I want to bring a lot of attention to. You know, Justin Baseman, he's been very great as well. And you guys do such a phenomenal job. I love the discipline that you guys have as fighters. I think that's important. But I also want to say we hope to have the interview with Dana White coming up here in the fall when that kicks off. And I'd love to have you back, as well as some of your other fighters, to add on to what you guys are doing and let the whole world know that you have a legitimate business. And, of course, you talked about sponsorship and getting insurance for guys. You know, we are with United Labor. It's guaranteed insurance without medical questions, so a lot of fighters would qualify for that. So if I could be a part of making that happen with Charlton Big C Sports, you guys need medical just like the wealthy guys, whether it's Conor McGregor or even Dana White himself. So I do want to thank you for being on the program, and we'll have you back again at another time. I wish you the best of success on your fight coming up in Vancouver, British Columbia. Listening to you talk, not only are you a great fighter, but you're a fine man, and I appreciate talking to you. And I also want to say thank you so much, Big C, as we have more talks with the UFC, as well as Uriah Faber and Nate Diaz coming up in future conversations, as well as Dana White. Josh Emmett, we thank you so much for being on the program. We wish you all the best in your fighting endeavors coming up on the UFC on Fox, and also Charlton and Big C Sports, every Monday through Friday at 5 o'clock p.m. to the 6 o'clock hour on the iHeart Radio Network worldwide. We thank you. We appreciate you. And we hope that you have a super fantastic day.
Thanks, you guys. I appreciate it. You guys take care.
Thank you, bro. Thank you.